The elderly man had barely lifted the first spoonful of soup when a little girl ran across the small diner, wrapped her tiny arms around his neck, and called him Grandpa with tears streaming down her face. Every customer stopped eating. The child's mother stood frozen in disbelief, her coffee cup slipping from her trembling hands, because the lonely stranger sitting by the window was the father she had spent 27 years believing never wanted to see her again. In a single unforgettable afternoon, a quiet roadside diner became the place where decades of heartbreak, unanswered letters, and painful misunderstandings finally collided. Before we uncover the truth that changed an entire family forever, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us that love can sometimes find its way home when we least expect it. Calvin Prescott had spent nearly 3 decades carrying a loneliness so deep that even the busiest places in the world never made him feel surrounded by people. At 72 years old, he lived alone in a modest house overlooking rolling fields where the afternoons were filled only with birdsong and the distant hum of passing tractors. His days followed the same quiet rhythm. He watered flowers planted by his late wife, read worn novels beside the front porch, and drove every Saturday along the same country highway without any particular destination. Friends often encouraged him to join community gatherings, but Calvin always smiled politely before declining. They assumed grief over losing his wife had made him withdrawn. Only Calvin knew that another loss had broken his heart long before that. His daughter, Maren Prescott, had disappeared from his life 27 years earlier. The separation had not happened because of hatred. It had happened because of silence. When Maren was 21, she dreamed of becoming an artist instead of joining the family furniture business. Calvin, burdened by financial struggles after the sudden collapse of his workshop, feared she would face hardship chasing uncertain dreams. Their conversations slowly turned into painful arguments. Each believed the other had stopped listening. Then one afternoon, Maren left home believing her father had chosen pride over love. Calvin believed she had chosen freedom over family. Neither realized how desperately the other wanted reconciliation. Letters were written but never received after an unexpected move changed addresses. Phone numbers disappeared. Years quietly became decades. Maren eventually married a gentle schoolteacher named Owen Barrett and built a peaceful life in a neighboring state. They welcomed a daughter named Eliza, whose bright curiosity filled every room with laughter. Maren often wondered whether her father still thought about her, yet every passing year made reaching out seem more impossible. Shame slowly replaced hope. She convinced herself that too much time had passed for healing. Calvin believed the very same thing. One sunny autumn afternoon, Calvin set out on another aimless drive through quiet country roads lined with golden trees. Warm sunlight poured across open fields, and crisp breezes carried the comforting scent of harvested farmland. After several hours behind the wheel, he noticed a small family diner he had never visited before. A hand-painted wooden sign simply read "Welcome Home." Something about those words stirred his heart. He parked his old pickup truck and stepped inside. The diner felt wonderfully ordinary. Sunlight streamed through large front windows, filling the room with warmth. Fresh pies cooled behind a glass display. The comforting aroma of homemade bread, roasted chicken, and cinnamon drifted through the air. Elderly neighbors shared stories over coffee while young families laughed together between bites of lunch. It was the kind of place where strangers greeted one another without hesitation. A cheerful waitress named Tessa Holbrook welcomed Calvin with genuine kindness. She noticed the sadness hidden behind his polite smile but never asked uncomfortable questions. Instead, she seated him beside the brightest window in the diner. Calvin ordered vegetable soup and a turkey sandwich. While waiting, he quietly watched families enjoying simple moments together. Every smile reminded him of birthdays missed. Every child's laughter echoed memories of the little girl who once raced into his workshop covered in sawdust, proudly announcing that she had painted another picture just for him. He blinked away tears before anyone noticed. At another table across the room, 7-year-old Eliza Barrett colored pictures while waiting for lunch with her parents. Curious by nature, she occasionally glanced toward the elderly man sitting alone by the window. Something about him seemed familiar. Not because she had ever met him, but because her mother kept an old photograph tucked inside a family album showing a younger man with the same gentle eyes. Children often notice details adults overlook. While Marin spoke with her husband, Eliza quietly carried one of her crayons toward Calvin. She politely offered him a drawing she had just finished because, as she later explained, he looked like someone who could use a little sunshine. Calvin accepted the colorful picture with heartfelt gratitude. It showed a small family holding hands beneath a bright blue sky. As he thanked her warmly, Marin looked up. The spoon slipped from Calvin's hand. Time stopped. Across the diner stood the daughter he had not seen in 27 years. Her hair carried gentle silver strands now. Her smile had matured. Yet he recognized her instantly. Marin stared back in complete disbelief. She whispered her father's name so quietly that only Owen heard it. Neither moved. Years of unanswered questions filled the silence between them. Little Eliza looked back and forth between the two adults before innocently asking why both of them were crying. Then she did something no adult had found the courage to do. She ran toward Calvin. Wrapping her small arms around his shoulders, she smiled brightly and called him Grandpa because she suddenly realized the man from the old photograph was standing right in front of her. The entire diner watched through tearful eyes. Marin slowly walked toward her father. Every step carried decades of regret. Calvin stood carefully, uncertain whether he deserved forgiveness. Before either found the right words, Marin embraced him with trembling arms. Neither cared that strangers watched. Years of loneliness dissolved into tears. When they finally sat together, the truth unfolded slowly over steaming cups of coffee and untouched plates of food. Calvin explained how he had written dozens of letters after she left. Every single one had been returned because she had already moved. He visited her last known apartment only to discover she had relocated months earlier. He contacted old friends. Nobody knew where she had gone. Marin quietly reached into her handbag. Inside rested a bundle of yellowed envelopes. She had written letters too. Every birthday. Every Christmas. Every anniversary after her mother passed away. Each remained unsent because she never knew where her father lived after selling the family workshop. They had both spent 27 years believing the other had stopped caring. In reality, they had never stopped searching. Owen listened silently before gently admitting something unexpected. Several years earlier he had secretly hired a genealogy researcher hoping to locate Calvin as a surprise for Marin's birthday. Unfortunately, the search reached countless dead ends because property records contained outdated information. The family had almost found one another several times. Life simply kept placing small obstacles between them. Tessa, the waitress, quietly refilled coffee cups while pretending not to notice the tears surrounding the table. Later she admitted that witnessing families reunite reminded her why she loved working in a small diner where ordinary afternoons sometimes became unforgettable moments. Over the following weeks, Calvin and Marin slowly rebuilt what time had stolen. There were awkward conversations. Painful memories. Honest apologies. Neither tried to erase the past. Instead, they accepted it with humility. Calvin apologized for allowing fear to sound like control when Marin dreamed of becoming an artist. He admitted that protecting her future had become more important to him than understanding her heart. Marin apologized for leaving without giving either of them enough time to heal. She confessed that youthful pride had convinced her silence would hurt less than another painful conversation. Both realized they had loved each other every single day. They had simply forgotten how to communicate. Eliza became the joyful bridge connecting generations. She insisted Grandpa attend school art shows. She proudly displayed paintings inspired by stories Calvin told about building furniture by hand. Together they planted flowers in his garden, baked pies using old family recipes, and spent sunny afternoons sketching landscapes beneath enormous oak trees. For the first time in decades, Calvin's quiet house echoed with laughter again. Months later, Marin organized a community art exhibition featuring local artists of every age. At the center of the gallery stood one painting unlike any other. It portrayed a small roadside diner glowing beneath warm afternoon sunlight. Above the entrance appeared the familiar words "Welcome home." Inside the painting, an elderly man sat beside a little girl offering him a colorful drawing while a woman stood nearby with tears in her eyes. The title simply read "Beyond the Years." Visitors often paused longest before that painting. Many never knew the story behind it. Those who did rarely walked away without wiping tears from their cheeks. Calvin eventually became a familiar face at the diner. Every Saturday afternoon he occupied the same table beside the window, not because he was lonely anymore, but because that place reminded him that hope sometimes waits in the most ordinary corners of life. Tessa always greeted him warmly. Local families recognized him. Children waved excitedly. The diner no longer represented heartbreak. It represented beginnings. One bright spring afternoon, the owner asked Calvin why he continued driving such a long distance every week when there were restaurants much closer to home. Calvin smiled gently before looking toward the sunlit window where everything had changed. He explained that some places served meals. Others served miracles. Years passed, and the little diner became known throughout the community as more than just a place to eat. People celebrated birthdays there, welcomed new babies, comforted grieving neighbors, and reunited with old friends. Calvin often smiled quietly whenever he watched strangers walk through the front door because he knew better than anyone that no one could predict which ordinary afternoon might become the moment that changed an entire life forever. Before this story reaches its heartfelt ending, we would love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment sharing whether you believe it is ever too late to forgive someone you love, because your words may encourage another person to make the phone call, write the letter, or take the first step toward healing today. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we all remember that broken hearts are not always healed by the passing of time. Sometimes they are healed by one unexpected afternoon, one brave embrace, and one small place where love finally finds its way home beyond all the years that tried to keep it apart.